On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, what are the areas of growth for Nick Caley in year two? And also, how will he be able to incorporate Woody Marks and Jaylin Noel?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Really good show lined up for you today as we kick off the week. And I think it's important to close out today's episode with two early win total projections for 2026. Jaylin Noel, Woody Marks, what should we expect to see from those two sophomore players? One receiver, one running back. And I think it's important to really talk about because for Woody Marks, the David Montgomery edition, that should open up room for him to be a more dynamic player. But in what area of the offense? And for Jaylin Noel, with the return of Tank Dell, how can Nick Caley utilize Jaylin Noel? And more so with the absence and subtraction of Christian Kirk, I think that's more important to look at compared to the addition of Tank Dell for this upcoming year. But also, just the overall areas of growth for Nick Caley in year two. He has some highs, he has some lows. I think a full year into this system, the more so a full year with the players, with the organization, something should settle in for Nick Caley and his coaching staff. And in a lot of ways, what we hope to see is the offense just performing better and more consistently throughout the games. I want to shout out my everydayers from the Himalayas for making the Locked On Texan podcast your first listen of the day. Drop those mountains in the comment section, if you will. And also, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel has an amazing deal out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. So for me, guys, just to kick it off, for one, let me say this. I think there are two sides of the coin when discussing the Texans' offensive failures in 2025. Some see it all on the shoulders of CJ Stroud. Some see it as a failure by Nick Caley. Some see it at, before you even look at Nick Caley, some see the hiring of Nick Caley as a questionable decision that should have never been made. I'm here to say both can shoulder the blame, right? And I think both can shoulder the reason why the offense had good moments. I mean, the Kansas City game for the Houston Texans was one of those moments where I thought, outside of the third quarter, and the theme for the Houston Texans this entire year needs to be being a better third quarter team, being a better first and third quarter team. But you had moments last year where for CJ Stroud things settled in for him and he played a lot better. Right? You had moments throughout the year where you would see Caley taking scraps to make something work out of nothing. Right? So I think in a lot of ways we have to be fair. The reality is there needs to be grace extended to both going into next year. That said, for Caley and his entire offensive coaching staff, there needs to be an assertive effort to be a better functional team. 39 penalties were charged to the offensive line last year, 305 yards lost. You're looking at the 18 false starts, Another part of this conversation about functionality is that Caley and his offense have to be quicker in getting to the line of scrimmage, getting the play in, right? Get into the LOS, man. And key moments throughout the entire year. I mean, I would be at home or I would be at the games and I'll be writing my notes. And a lot of times in my notes per game, I would write the lack of urgency. That was a problem for the offense a lot last year. And these moments were happening in crucial and key moments throughout the game. The offense was breaking the huddle with less than 15 seconds left remaining, limiting CJ Stroud's time to make necessary pre-snap adjustments and audibles. So when we ask for Stroud to have more control within the offense, I mean, that's great. And he made checks into some scoring plays of first downs last season. Like a part of the things, a part of his game that really grew last year was the mental aspect of it. But that said, how often can he do that if there's not enough time left on the play clock to do so? So what I like to hear, from Nick Caley, he took accountability from that last year, stating that he needed to do a better job of getting the team going early and improving their overall efficiency. That's important. And I think in a lot of ways, Texan fans, that's what you want to hear from your offensive coordinator. But you also, but you also don't want to just hear it. You want to see it come to life, right? You want to see that team moving with a sense of urgency. And a part of me really thinks, and I've said it once, I'll say it again. Year one was such a foundational year, not only for Caley, but for what he wants to install. And also, you look at how that impacted the quarterback, especially the first half of the season compared to the second half of the season. These things matter a lot. That's a big reason why I didn't believe the Houston Texans should have went with a first-time play caller in CJ Stroud's third year. So can the areas or the bumps in the roads from last year, we should see that smooth out a lot more this year, a lot more, because now I think there's a better understanding of what the quarterback likes, what the quarterback is good at, what the offense likes, and also we talk about the offseason additions of the offensive line upgrades and bringing in David Montgomery. But you like to hear Nick Caley take that accountability there, and of course the red zone woes, right? That needs to be a lot better. But then the offense, which struggle with their identity and struggle with who they wanted to be compared to who they were. They couldn't move bodies when they got to the red zone. They lost the ability to get creative in the red zone. And overall, their vision was full of holes. Now, this was a problem for the Texans, right? And I went back to look at a few games. You look at the Bucs game. They lost that game. They got down to the 1-yard line during that game on a drive. 0 points. Seattle, they got down to the 1-yard line, settled for a field goal. Denver, they got down to the 1-yard line twice. And on the 2-yard line, they lost that game, 3 field goals. So, I mean, let's look at that Denver game, right? And that was a game Stroud went out and they had to, insert Davis Mills at quarterback. They got down to the 1-yard line twice and on the 2-yard line. And they came away with 9 points instead of the ability to come away with 18 and, with a field goal, 21 points. The Titans game, they got down to the 1-yard line, sack turnover on downs. The Bills game, they got down to the 5-yard line, field goal. Indy, the 4-yard line, field goal, big play called back in the red zone due to illegal formation. Kansas City, Dalton Schultz touchdown was called back due to illegal shift. K-Stow, a first down in that same game was wiped off the board due to a penalty. The playoffs, Woody Marks touchdown versus the Patriots, wiped off due to a penalty. The best part about the future is knowing where you went wrong in the past. I don't think the Texans will have those getting to know you type of moments that can slow down the momentum and create second-guessing situations on the offense this season, at least not as much compared to what they dealt with in 2025. And that's a great thing. I think these short fixes alone can get Houston to being a better scoring offense. And they'll need it considering they're playing a tougher schedule. This can't be the season where points are hard to come by. This can't be the season where the offense doesn't look out for the defense in the way the defense has looked out for the offense, right? Cannot happen this year. They're going to play some teams that know how to put points on the board. They're going to play some teams that understand that for the Texans, if you get up 7 points last year, how often were they able to make a comeback if you were up by 2 points? I mean, two scores, excuse me. And so it should be on everybody's offensive goal list. We're going to be better in the red zone. It should be on everybody's offensive goal list. We're not going to be one of the most penalized offenses in the league. It should be on everybody's top goal list. We're going to be able to run the ball when we get inside the 10-yard line. We're not going to get down there and score a touchdown, but that touchdown is going to get called back because of an illegal shift or illegal formation. We're not going to have that this year. And I think, again, those small changes are actually big changes. Those fixes can lead to, you put it like this, those fixes can lead to less 3 points and more 6 points. And again, like the Texans just got to be better in the first and third quarter of games. Now, you know what else I really want to see? Nick Caley's growth in drive-to-drive moments, situational play calling, and player utilization. So on the other side, let's talk about how can Woody Marks and Jaylin Noel be incorporated a lot more into the passing game for the Houston Texans this year. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. And these sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. Indeed sponsored jobs goes and find that candidate. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I'll be talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right hire and the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? Well, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers out there. Again, shout out to my everydayers. Don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with myself and other listeners of this show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedontexans.supercast.com. I'm just looking at some of the numbers for the Houston Texans last year. 11 personnel was the Houston Texans' most successful personnel unit, right? That's where they scored 164 points out of 718 plays. So they really deployed 11 personnel a lot. Offensive total EPA for 11 personnel, all plays, 11.16. Now, this is why getting Foster Moreau and really investing in the tight end position was so important, because you look at the Texans' worst offensive total EPA in 2025, it was 12 personnel. They scored 12 points off 84 plays, negative 18.79 per EPA. And so, a lot of times we saw the Texans have to deploy, Blake Fish out there to create their jumbo package, and they went through tight ends. It feels like every 2 games there was a new tight end out there alongside Dalton Schultz. So this year is going to be extremely exciting, but I wanted to point that out, that a lot of what they went through last year, especially based on what we presumed in 2025 and what we presume we'll still see, the background of Nick Caley coming off the Rams and also his time in New England where he was a tight ends coach in both places, the passing game coordinator. The belief is it is necessary to have a capable tight end on the field, 2 tight ends on the field at the same time. And so I think that we'll see that a lot more this year in a positive way. And I think that will lead to a better offensive experience. And I think a lot of that will impact how we see the run game benefit from having 2 tight ends out there that are capable, that won't put a limitation on what the offense can do once the tight end is out there. Now, for me, guys, it's important to look at the involvement of 2 players, 2 sophomores, right? One got a lot of opportunity last year, and Woody Marks, he was thrown into the fire, and say what you want about the young man, but he was able to be Houston's saving grace in a lot of games. He also is just an extremely tough football player, man. He went out in a lot of games and came back in, and that's when the Houston Texans really needed him the most. And also, the other guy is Jaylin Noel, right, who didn't get the opportunity that a lot of us felt he should, especially as the year went on, because the Texans had faith, in my opinion, in Christian Kirk and Xavier Hutchinson in that mix as well. And I got to talk about X this week. But Jaylin Noel is going to be a very important piece to what this offense can bring in 2024. But when I look at Woody Marks, he recently was on KPRC2 with Aaron Wilson, and he talked about his third down back role. And he mentioned just split me out. Nick Caley is doing a great job of, right now doing all type of routes. I love the route tree, and we use as many as he can. And so when I look at the addition of a David Montgomery, I think to myself, well, obviously Woody Marks is going to settle into the second back on this team, which is, I think, it's great. But how can we incorporate the ability of Woody Marks if he's not going to be toting the rock as much as he did last year? And guys, I got to tell you, there were some really good things from Woody Marks last year. And I think a lot of what we saw was what he was able to do, but he wasn't featured a lot to do some great things. So for Marks, I think there needs to be more involvement. And I was looking at his numbers from 2025, Woody Marks receiving numbers: 8 receiving first downs, 30th in receiving yards and yak, 26th in targets at 40, 10th in TDs. But let's put that into scope with a minimum of 40 targets. 9.3 yards per catch, that was 6th out of running backs. 25th in yak, 4th in average depth of target, 7th in longest receiving play, which was 50 yards. And so for me, I look at Woody Marks as a weapon that, in a lot of ways, the Texans didn't find a way to allow for him to, utilize the fullness of his game. And so with the addition of a David Montgomery, now the Texans can, like I said, in the scope, put Woody Marks in a situation where there's a dynamic there as a receiving back. There's also still a dynamic there as a running back, right? I mean, he still can run the ball, and I don't think the Texans should have a limitation to put him in the box on what he can and can't do. That's not what I'm advocating for. But I am advocating for the usage of Woody Marks in the receiving game a lot more this year. A lot of that is due to I'm not 100% confident in the receiving core, but I am more confident in a tight end bunch. And with the addition of David Montgomery, I am more confident in what I believe Woody Marks can do and how he can hurt a defense in a receiving game. And so the thought is, for me at least, and I think you guys really need to look at it from this point of view, the thought is, can Woody Marks be that additional check down that you can trust to get upfield to create plays, right? And if he's not going to run the ball at the level he did last year, in what ways, it's the question, can he hurt the defense, right? And I think we should see a lot more intentional Woody Marks receiving usage plays in 2026. And also when I look at Jaylin Noel, listen, just looking at the numbers from 2026, Jaylin Noel featured in 202 receiving route plays last year. He had 35 targets, 26 catches, 292 yards. And it always frustrated us that we saw less of Noel and more of Christian Kirk, who was featured on 279 routes in 2025, 52 targets, 28 catches, but he had less yards than Jaylin Noel. Now, you also got to throw Xavier Hutchinson in this bunch as well. He was on the field for 401 plays, 57 targets, 35 catches, 428 yards, 3 TDs. This week I'm going to talk about Xavier Hutchinson. Maybe I've been disrespecting him a lot more than I should have. And it's not that I don't think he's a good player, but with his consistent ascension as a player, does that put pressure on the front office to find a way to keep him going into next year? This is his last year in the contract. But getting back to Jaylin Noel, the involvement that I would like to see out of the offense and Noel this year going into his second year, even with the addition of Tank Dell, what you guys got to understand about Jaylin Noel is that a lot of his game is predicated around being the fastest to the deep point of the field. Whatever that deep point of the field is, that 4.3 speed, get in there. And once he gets there, his ability to make a play. That's Jaylin Noel. That was Jaylin Noel in college when he got better. As the game and the seasons and the years went on, he got better and got better. You'll look up and you'll see to yourself, this kid had a ton of deep yards, right? And so how is he doing that? Extremely quick off the line of scrimmage. And again, getting to a place where he's faster than everybody else down the field. So for the Texans this year, a lot of what I think we should see out of Tank Dell, number one, is taking your time to bring him back on, right? I'm not saying if he's ready to go by week one, you don't play him. If he's ready, you bring him in. But okay, you limit the amount of reps. You limit the amount of snaps. You allow for that slow, very important and crucial build-up point to where for the Texans, what plays in their favor this year that you can correlate to Tank Dell's full return? A week 8 bye. So that would be the perfect week. I mean, even if he's not playing, if they choose to say, look, we're gonna wait until the week 8 bye. But that would be the perfect week till you get to that point, you reassess him, see where he's at, see how he's feeling, and from that point, you kind of let him take off. But for Tank Dell, he is so good in those spots where it's 12 and under, which makes him a first down threat. Tank Dell is also extremely good at plays downfield, which makes him an X factor, especially with his chemistry with the quarterback and CJ Stroud. The addition of Tank Dell should also, in a lot of ways, just heighten Jaylin Noel's play on the field, because in a lot of ways, they could bring a yin-yang dynamic on each drive, each possession, each down, each quarter, each half, each game. Where for Tank Dell right now, we believe that it's 3rd and 7. We need 8 yards. We know you can run this out route better than anybody else on the field and have the wherewithal to stay in bounds, pick up the first yard. It's 2nd and 7. Jaylin Noel, we really want to take a deep shot here on a play action pass. We're going to put you in the slot and allow you to run a deep post or a deep crosser across the field. And that could work when it's 2nd and 7 and you have a safety that has to come down to maybe worry about Tank Dell because the corners have their hands full with Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins on the outside. Like, these things matter. And this is the point that I'm getting at. You know what? Let's come back. And I really want to dive into how it's Nick Caley's, make it or break it. This could tell a lot about him as an offensive coordinator if he cannot find a way to incorporate the two together. And if he does find a way to incorporate the two together, I mean, now you're looking at what everybody feels like CJ Stroud bouncing back, because the weapons on the field may not be the big names, but they mesh together so well. Let's talk more Texas talk on the other side. And before we get to that conversation, Texan fans out there, the NBA playoffs are here and every possession matters. And if you're looking to get even closer to the action, can't get to the floor games, but FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets, just for getting started. I like using FanDuel during the playoffs because everything I need is right there in one place. You can check stats, trends, and matchups before even making your picks, which makes the whole experience feel a lot more informed. It's really easy to navigate the FanDuel app, and it makes playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. I'm going to close out today's podcast talking about my 2 early win projected totals. But to follow up that last conversation, it is imperative that Nick Caley finds a way to incorporate Tank and Noel at the same time. Because I talked about Woody Marks. Like, Woody Marks, it's kind of been laid out already. More targets could lead to a different dynamic or an expounded upon dynamic in his game where he could really impact the team as a receiver out of the backfield, right? And I think for last year, we saw Woody Marks go for 208 yards, 3 TDs, 9.3 yards per catch. So for this year, can he up that total to 350, right? However, for Tank and Jaylin Noel, because the Houston Texans, they opted to draft a receiver, but it was in the 6th round. They didn't bring in a receiver during free agency. They lost a receiver in free agency. And I look at Kirk being the ultimate, just roadblock in front of Jaylin Noel for getting on the field. But now you have to consider that the Texans felt a way about Jaylin Noel last year because they drafted him within the top 100. They still believe he has something there. And I kind of wonder if we would have saw a different version of Noel if Bobby Sloyd was the offensive coordinator compared to Nick Caley. And that goes for Jaden Higgins as well. But to the conversation, Noel and Tank Dell could really be driving forces for this offense. Because, another thing the offense struggled with last year, sustaining drives, right? And a lot of that had to do with the inability to run the ball at times. And I get it. However, let's look at it like this. Higgins, Nico, Tank, and Noel on the inside. With the speed, with the angles that they take, with their ability to know what CJ Stroud is thinking, especially the two vets and Tank and Nico, and then the two youngins in a Higgins and Noel, that could open up the offense with Dalton Schultz just doing whatever he needs to do. I don't think the offense needs to lean a lot on Dalton Schultz this year as much as they did in 2025. Those guys were drafted. Higgins was the first pick in the 2nd round for Houston last year. Jaylin Noel was their 3rd pick last year. This is a big season for them, and I think in a lot of ways, if Nick Caley can't figure out a way to mesh Jaylin Noel and Tank Dell, I'm not going to say he's going to be out the door, but there will be an indication on the limitations of his play calling ability. It will be. And I think right now, as we are in May, I think he is finding a way to get those guys on the field at the same time to present different issues and problems for opposing defenses. Because the fact is, like I mentioned, they did not go for a receiver early. They did not go for a receiver in the free agency. They feel like this bunch is good enough to win with. Okay, if you feel that way, show us how. And it's going to be important because we know what Nico Collins can bring. We know what Jaden Higgins can bring if he needs more opportunities. But we don't know really what the Texans have in Jaylin Noel. And we don't know how long it'll take to see Tank Dell back on the field. We don't know any of these things. So for Caley, how are you going to make your quarterback's job easier? And how are you going to be able to feature those two receivers? I think it's very important to look for in his 2nd year. And that goes, a part of the growth. Player utilization, situational play calling, all of that matters. And when you have that speed and that route running ability, that release that Tank Dell offers and the speed that Jaylin Noel offers, especially on plays down the field, you're looking at two dynamic players. Health matters, and just another year in the offensive system matters, right? So I think that's important. And remember, Nick Caley has not coached Tank Dell, at least as on the field as of yet. So a lot of that does matter. This will be, I think, Houston's most competitive training camp. I think any OTAs, any mini camps, any time they get together, the off-season programs, we're going to see and we're going to hear about just the differences in 26 compared to 25 and 24. But as I look at the two early projected win totals for the Houston Texans, for me, right, and I was looking at the schedule for the Houston Texans, Bills, Bengals, Colts, Cowboys, Titans, Jags, Giants, bye week, week 8. Again, that's a very important bye week for the Houston Texans. Chargers, Browns, Colts, Ravens, Steelers, Commanders, Jaguars, Eagles, Packers, Titans to close out the year, week 18. I could see the ceiling for this team at 13 wins. 12 was last year. That's what they got last year. They was 12-5. 2 years before, 10 years, they made the 2-game jump. And I think this is an even tougher schedule, but I think it's very important for the Houston Texans to take advantage of week 1 through week 7. Because Colts, not a playoff team. Bills, I'm sorry, the Bengals, not a playoff team. Colts, not a playoff team. Cowboys, not a playoff team. Titans, not a playoff team. The Jacksonville Jaguars, a playoff team, won the division. You split with them last year. And I mean, even there was some things that went on in that game that could have, it swayed in the Texans' favor. Giants, not a playoff team. So in the first 7 weeks of the NFL season for the Texans, they play 6 out of their 7 opponents, non-playoff teams from the year prior. And the other one that made the other 2 that made the playoffs, I'm sorry, 5 out of the first 7 weeks, excuse me. The Jags still feel like that's a better team. I still feel like the Texans are a better team. The Buffalo Bills, the Texans have had their number, especially at home, right? And so the Texans should go 5-2 heading into the bye week. Once they come out of that bye week, you're looking at the Chargers. The Texans have had their number. You're looking at the Browns. We don't know what the Browns is going to be this year. New offensive line, new offensive new head coach. Will it be Deshaun? Will it be Shadur? We know Titus Howard going to be out there playing ball, but we don't know what the Browns are going to present as a problem for any team or for a problem for themselves. Colts, Ravens, week 12, very important game. Steelers, that's at Pittsburgh. The Texans have shown they have the ability to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers at Pittsburgh. And I think in their last 2 matchups, the Houston Texans are 2-0. So I look at this and I see the ceiling being 13 wins for the Texans. I see the floor being 11 wins for the Houston Texans and still making the playoffs with 11 wins. And the games that I think could go either way, the Ravens, the Bills, the Commanders, and the Packers. 4 games I think could go either way, but I think the Houston Texans have a good shot to win both games. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube wherever you listen to your podcast, and follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Until next time, ladies and gents, Texan fans across the nation, peace.